Welcome back everyone to part 2 of the Social Clone project. Now that we have the very basics set up, let's dive into actually creating account functionality for our website. And as we're doing that, we're also going to begin to set up some basic template HTML files. Things like our base HTML file and the index HTML file for the home page. Alright, let's hop over to the Atom text editor and get started. Okay, here I am at Atom, and what we're going to start off doing is creating some basic template files that we know we're always going to be using, such as a base template and a homepage template. That means I will come over to templates, and I'm going to create a new file under my templates directory. That's the top level. I will create a base HTML file. That's where our actual base template is going to go. And then I will also create a new file here called index.html for our actual homepage. And then what I'm going to do here is type HTML, and I will just set up some very basic home page. So let's just say something like here in our actual body, let's create a heading 1 and say something like, welcome to Star Social, exclamation point. And then right at the top of this, what I can do is I know I'm already going to be extending from base.html, so let's do that as well. So I'll say extends from base.html. And then I will also put actually, since I know I'm extending from base.html, I'll put everything inside a block. So let's get rid of all this. Since I know I'm going to have a content block, I'll say block, and then content, and I'll put welcome to Star Social inside of this content block. Now that I have that, that actually means I need to go back to my HTML file, or base.html file, and set up a few things there. Since I'm going to be extending from base.html, I need to make sure that this is actually kind of a normal looking HTML file. So I'll keep that right now, and then inside the body, what I'm going to do is set up that actual block. So we'll say block, and then it's called content. So I will save that for now. There's still a lot more we can add in here that we are going to add in, such as a navigation bar, links to CSS, etc. But for right now, we'll keep it simple, and we'll just keep it as it is right now. So that's all I want to do for base.html. And in order to actually connect the base HTML and the index HTML to my actual web application or website, what I need to do is come over to urls.py under simple social. And under this, I'm also going to create a new file called views.py. And basically, we'll create a really simple view for our homepage and then link it to the URLs for the entire page. So I'm going to say from Django.views.generic import, and I will import the template view. That way I can just return back that template view. So we'll say class homepage, and this is going to inherit from template view. And then I'm just going to say, template name. My template name is equal to index.html. You can see I have a lot of autocomplete help there because I'm using a Django plugin package for Atom. So let me save that. I have homepage template name index.html. That's looking good. And now I need to come over to urls.py and make sure that I actually link it here. So let's scroll down, and then I will say not just URL but also include from Django.conf or configuration.urls. And then I'm also saying from dot import views. So that just says go to the current directory, which is simple social, and then grab views from there. Let's add it in to our URL patterns. I will say URL, and then using regular expressions, I will say R, hat or caret, $, basically the home page. So when someone just goes to your local host, whatever it happens to be, the very first home page is going to be views.homepage. And remember, for class-based views, we need to say as view. So call that method off of it. And then I will assign this name home. Okay, save that. There's still a lot more to add to this, but let's just make sure that we actually made that connection correctly. And if not, we can debug. I will run the server. And now let's hop over, slide, refresh this, and now it says welcome to Star Social. Great, so we linked up our home page. That should have been pretty straightforward given everything that we've already learned so far in this course. Now let's actually jump over and start with our add or accounts application. So I will come over to accounts. Let me close these so we don't get confused on anything. So now everything I'm doing is over on accounts, and under models.py, I want to create a simple model for accounts. And I'm actually going to use Django's built-in models for this. Okay, now inside this models.py file, what I'm going to do is import from Django.contrib import AUTH for authorization. So a lot of these authorization tools for accounts, they're actually built into Django. That way we don't have to mess around creating our own models for users, etc. So I'm just going to say class user, and I'm going to inherit from authModels.user, and then I'm also going to inherit from authModels.permissionsMixin. And then inside of this class, I'm just going to have a very simple string representation of the object. And what I'm going to do here is say, if you want the string representation of a user, do the following. I will say @ such as the @ symbol, kind of like a Twitter handle, and then using the format expression, I'm going to say self.username. Now you may be wondering, well, where's username? Where is that defined? So that's actually an attribute that comes built in with .user. So auth.models.user has the main attributes, and you can check out the documentation for more information on this, but basically it comes with what you would expect it to come with. It has first name, last name, email, username, and then maybe one more field. But what we're going to do is use this to automatically set up a form so that when someone is signing up for our actual website to become a user on it, Django is essentially going to take care of all that on the back end for us. So let me save that, and then let's continue on by creating a view for this. So I'm going to create a view, and we're going to need to connect this to a form later on, but I will do the following. I will say from Django.core.url resolvers import reverse lazy. So reverse lazy, remember we're using that in case someone is logged in or logged out where they should actually go. And then I will say from dot import forms. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have forms here, I will create a forms.py file that will connect my forms for logging in or signing up to this actual views. So before I continue here, I will say just class sign up, and this is going to be a create view, which means I need to import that. We'll say from Django.views.generic import a create view. So this is for creating a new user, and then here I'm just going to say pass because I want to deal with my forms file first. So inside of accounts, I'll say new file, and then I'll create a forms.py file, and now let's kind of create the forms for signing up. So this is actually again going to be relatively straightforward, given that Django is kind of doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us, which is kind of the whole point of Django, that it does all this stuff right out of the box. It comes batteries included. So a couple things I need to import here. From Django.contrib.auth, import get user model. So that returns the user model that's currently active in this project. And then I will say from Django.contrib.auth.forms import, and then I'm going to import a user creation form. So as you can see, there's already a user creation form built into authorization package. So a lot of the stuff we're going to be using just comes from this particular package, which also has excellent documentation. So again, basically the documentation page shows you how to create user accounts, admin accounts, etc. It has a whole basically huge page that goes through an entire process of doing this. So if you ever get confused on this or want some more reference, check out the documentation. It's actually really good for this. So I will say Django.contrib from forms, import a user creation form. This is essentially going to be kind of a sign up page. So when someone wants to create a user, and then I will say user create form, and I will inherit from the user creation form. What you want to be careful of is make sure that your class that's inheriting from this user creation form is not the exact same name as user creation form. So note here I say user create form and then user creation form. We could also say this as user sign up form, etc. But you don't want these to share the exact same name. Otherwise, sometimes Python will have an error with a self-reference call like that. So we'll say colon here, and I'm going to create my meta class, which we've actually kind of seen before. Remember, I can call the fields attribute inside of this, and then put a tuple of fields. Now these fields are actually already available for me from contrib.auth. So the fields that I'm going to have a user fill out is their username, their email, and then password, whoops, let me put that in as a string, password 1, and then also as a string, password 2. So that comes with the authorization user model, and it's basically just to confirm your password. So put in your password once and then confirm it with password 2. So those are the fields I want someone to put in. You could add more fields if you wanted to, but right now we'll just keep those basic default fields from authorization. And then this is kind of the most important part. We say model is equal to get user model, which allows us to use right here to get the current model of who's ever accessing that website. And then we will say diff init, and we're going to initialize this with self args keyword arguments. And this is essentially where I wouldn't expect you to memorize this, but instead reference the documentation for this particular thing. So what I'm going to do here, say create super, and then initialize that with args and keyword arguments. And then here we'll just say self.fields username dot label is equal to display name. So what is this actually doing? Well, basically what's going to happen is when the user comes in and they're ready to sign up, we're going to call user creation form from authorization.forms, and then we set up the meta class basically saying, okay, these are the fields that I want a user to be able to access when they're signing up. So whenever we're connecting to our models or database, this is what they're going to have access to, the username, the email, and then set up and confirm their password. Now, if I actually want labels on that form in that template, what I can do is here under the init, after calling this super class, what you end up doing is saying self.fields, almost like a dictionary, username, .label, and then you can set up the label for that actual field. So that's the same thing as setting up a label on a form HTML page, except here we're going to set it from the actual forms.py view. And then finally, I want self.fields email label. I will say, let's just call that email address. So as a quick note, you don't really need to do this. This is kind of just for your own customization labels in case you had a specific thing that you wanted to show. So for example, let's say you're trying to make a Twitter clone. Maybe instead of username, you could say something here such as display name, say something like Twitter account handle, or etc. If you are doing something that's kind of specific or customized to your website where you don't want username just to say username, you instead want it to say my Twitter account handle on the actual form. That way when the user's using your website, they have a better understanding of what username will actually stand for. This is where you would actually do that. You would say self.fields, access whatever field you wanted to that's available to you in .forms. Usually it's just your first name, last name, username, email, and password. And then you call .label attribute off of that, and then set it as your display name. So that's actually all we need to do here in forms.py. And now that we have that ready to go, we can come back to views.py and set that up. So I'll come back to views.py over here, and now instead of saying pass, let's start filling this in. So this is going to take a form class, class object attribute, and it's just going to be forms.userCreateForm. And note here, I'm not instantiating the class, so I won't put parentheses. I'll just leave it like that. So my form class is actually equal to this form class, just setting this attribute equal to that class that we just created. And then I'm going to have a success URL be equal to reverse lazy, and then I'll say login. So what does that actually mean? It means once someone has signed up for our actual website, then on a successful sign up, I will reverse them back to the login page. But remember, it's reverse lazy because I don't want this to actually execute until they've hit submit on that sign up button. Otherwise, if it was just a normal reverse, it would kind of automatically reverse without letting them sign up. That's why I have reverse lazy there. And then I need to finally say the template name for this. So a template name is going to be equal to accounts/signup.html. So let me save that. And now let's actually work with templates on our accounts. So underneath the accounts folder, I'm going to create a new folder called templates. Let's make sure that's there. So templates. And then under that, remember we kind of followed this app templates app directory scheme. So under templates, I will create something called accounts, a directory there, And then finally under here is where I'm going to have two template files, a login.html template and a signup.html template. So we'll say new file, login.html, and then we'll say new file, signup.html. Okay, so that's it for now. In the next section, or next lecture I should say, what we're going to do is kind of keep continuing filling out these HTML files and then connecting the views to URLs. But let's quickly go over what we just did. So over here in accounts, what we ended up doing was from models.py inside the accounts, we basically created this really simple user model. Technically, it's not that simple. Our job is simple. The heavy lifting is being done by Django by just importing these two things, models.user and models.permission mixin. And then what we're also doing is coming over to views.py and creating a very simple sign up create view. That's essentially creating a new user. And then we need to connect that to a user create form. So we create a new file called forms.py and we use this user create form. And then you also notice that we kind of set up our own custom labels for the username and email. These are technically not mandatory. You don't have to set up your own custom labels, but in case you ever needed to do that, that's how you can do it. All right, coming up next, we're going to kind of mess around for urls.py, make the connections, and also set up these login and signup.html templates. Okay, thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture where we continue working with accounts.